Hey, Champion Nation. Welcome to the Champion Nation podcast.
So the night before chemotherapy, and I have no family, I had to just counsel myself. I had a dream, and I don't know if you've ever had a dream where it's more than a dream. It's almost like an alternate reality. You wake up from it, and you probably remember it the rest of your life. So I'm driving down a country road with a lot of rocks and bumps. It's not even paved, and there's wilderness on both sides. And I'm in my little VW Bug, the favorite car I ever had, my little beige VW Bug. And I hit a stone wall. And I look up, and it's a needle point mountain that just goes straight up. And I think, oh my God. And I back the car up and I gun it, and I go up a little and I slide down, and I gun it again and I go up a little and I slide down. Then I say to myself, well, what? Wait a minute. Even if you got to the top, which is just a needle point, you would just fall down the other side in your car and crash and die. So I got out of the car and turned into a giant, and the mountain became a sharp rock under my feet that I just stepped over, and that told me everything I needed to do to survive, which was see it from an eagle's eye perspective.
Hey, Champion Nation. My name is Kashaun Cooper, and I am the host of the Champion Nation podcast, as well as the founder of the Champion Nation. I have the pleasure today. We have the pleasure today to sit down to listen to and watch none other than Diane Gilman. She's an author, and we're going to talk about that. And, she's a fashion icon, obviously. We know that. But also she's a TV personality, but also a cancer survivor. So we would call her a champion. Hey, Diane, welcome to the Champion Nation.
I love being a champion. It's great.
Absolutely.
Winning.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit, just a smidget of who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Okay, so if you've ever met anybody who literally had a destiny in life, that would be me. I knew from the time I was a toddler that I was just dying to immerse myself in fashion. So, of course, I was born into a family who said absolutely not. I had to leave. I had to make a really consequential choice. Fashion, career, destiny, DNA, or family. And I chose my destiny. So, I was always good in fashion, introduced washable silk to America in the mid-90s, but then lost my name in a lawsuit and got adopted by QVC, by Teleretail. Went on in Teleretail selling washable silk, but never close to my heart till I truly hit middle age at about the age of 55. And I thought, wait a minute. I hung out with rock and roll icons like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. Whoa, who is this in the mirror? I can't up here in jeans, my chubby little middle-aged body. So I rebelled. I went out and bought 3 yards of denim, took my measurements, kind of scary, and made my own jean. And what that did for my life, how people started treating me differently, like I was younger, smarter, hipper. I thought, wouldn't this work for millions of women? And the network, I was on HSN at the time, the sister station to QVC, gave me a chance, made my pitch, and it skyrocketed. We went to at our peak for years, $100 million a year in retail. And then I thought, okay, this can't be just for American women. Every woman has the same hormones, estrogen or not. And wouldn't this work all over the world? And so I went to QVC and pitched my story and said, please, please give me a chance. Got on QVC UK, no language barriers. Immediately shot to #1. And then Germany, Dusseldorf,
Wow.
Milan, Italy, Paris, France, Toronto, Canada, and Sydney, Australia. And all of
Wow.
that happening at once and all that travel, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just cruising right along, and I'm 72 years old because now I'm 78. And
You look
unbelievable, but
amazing.
thank you. I feel
You're
pretty
welcome.
good. And I knew something wasn't right, but I
Mm.
always put off thinking about it or acting on it by saying, oh my God, I've got another plane to catch. I've got another show to do. Finally, that was impossible to ignore. It was breast cancer. It was in both breasts. I, by a miracle, got speed railed into Mount Sinai in New York City
Mm-hmm.
to the
Familiar.
head of breast cancer surgery, best thing ever. And she was unbelievable. Really, we spoke the same language, and they took care of it. Took 2 years out of my life. I was gone for less than 9 or 10 months from TV, and then started right back in again. Then COVID hit, and so not me. I have a really lousy immune system, at least at that moment. So, but they closed the studio down. So we started doing shows from home. When they
Mm.
brought back going to the studio again, I just thought, you know what? I'm 77 years old. This thing of being in the studio till 3 a.m., being back at 8 a.m. in blistering Florida heat and humidity, I don't know. And you know what? I asked myself some very basic questions.
And what were those
Does
questions?
going on air, does it make your heart beat fast anymore? Do you have that sense of, oh my God, I can't wait for this show to begin? And also, I have to say that during the time that I was out for breast cancer and then COVID, where we were all separated, the New York design studio totally closed down, I had sold my name. They wanted to start designing the line, so I wasn't really selling my own designs anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
am someone who always wants to be true to herself.
Mm.
Authenticity is so embedded in my nature. And I said, no, it's not a thrill anymore. And then, all the outside voices start coming in like, are you crazy? You're
Right?
#1. It's so easy to stay here. You'll be here forever. Well, for someone like me, the worst thing you can say is in a situation where it is not fulfilling anymore, you'll be here forever. That's like, oh my God,
You
I'm
sound
a
like my wife.
prisoner.
You sound just like my wife. She's the same exact way.
So I thought, okay, I've developed, I hope, the talent for communication in front of a camera. I really enjoy social media. I
Mm-hmm.
love the internet and everything about it. And could I try a podcast? Well, I don't know. I don't really know anybody in that field. I swear to you. This was like, there's a commercial on TV. I actually cannot watch it. They go to the top of the Empire State Building. She puts on a bungee cord and jumps off. That's what it felt like to me. Saying goodbye to something I'd done for 30 years and could do literally in a coma. And I thought, No, within 5 weeks, I was offered my own weekly podcast.
Wow.
I wanted to learn that trade, and then I co-hosted a podcast for about 14 weeks, and then we thought, you know what?
What?
It's an all-girl team. It's basically female-dominated subjects and guests. I was allowed to bring on guests I wanted to bring on. Let's really go full throttle and do it ourselves. And so we did, and wow, it is fantastic. We get to talk about everything 55 plus for females. It's called Too Young to Be Old, which is, to me, if your headset and your attitude is young, you will always be too young to be old.
I'm
And
glad you brought that up. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
oh no,
we're going to touch on that. And real quick, you said something a few moments ago. I literally want to touch on because I believe you're not the only one who had this fork in the road where
yep,
where there is DNA and then there's destiny.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many of us who's presented with that fork in the road, and it sounds like you went the route where your heart expanded.
I had
And
no choice.
okay, what do you? I wanted you to touch on that. What do you mean you had no choice? Most of us go with DNA because mommy, daddy, uncle, grandma, the family is saying this is what you do. You will never make a living at selling jeans or being an artist or being a this or being that, and we tend to follow their steps. But you
They
rebelled.
they said all of that. I don't know. Part of it, and I'm like the most insecure person alive. I've always got to do better. I've always got to do more. I never did enough. It was never good enough. I mean, that's me. But my parents got to the point, honestly, where they locked me in my bedroom. They intercepted all my mail. I had no phone calls, and they were choosing a husband for me who I was going to be forced to marry. I mean, they really didn't want me to do what I needed to do, where I think today you would probably be in a household and they'd say, oh my God, thank God she wants to work. Thank God she's got
Mm-hmm.
an interest. So all my life, I found that served me well, that if I hadn't followed my destiny, I would probably be a 700-pound recluse living in my mother's basement on the internet 24 hours a day, right?
Right.
On like learning how to crochet
Right.
doilies website. So I also always have had a philosophy to live every moment, and even more so after breast cancer. When you're faced with your own mortality, I think you can, at least for me, I came out of it so grateful for another chance at health, so grateful to still be alive, really appreciating how beautiful the world can be. And so I kind of looked at breast cancer as part of my destiny, almost like the finishing link of the reboot from being on television, being a success, loving doing that, loving building, building, building. And then great divorce. Just, you know what? The thrill, as they say, the thrill is gone.
Right.
And find a new thrill. Find a thrill that is the right thing for where you are at the moment. My body just couldn't take that much travel anymore. I just sort of customized my next deal. But what I'm doing right now is definitely destiny because we've just had a meteoric rise. We're now in the top, and we've only been doing this now solo for 4 months, my podcast. We are now in the top 10 of podcasts for women over 55. Thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Congratulations. That is an amazing feat. And you said building, building, building. And,
Yeah,
and anyone that's listening to and watching the Champion podcast, those individuals are builders. And you were fortunate enough to build a gene empire,
yeah.
a gene empire, selling over 100 millions worth of genes. Can you share any key principles or strategies that contributed to your retailing success?
So the first strategy was, as a female, it was very advantageous to be a female designer because I could wear the product.
Mm.
Second of all, I realized that this was not a country or a world for older women. You are just in fashion shunted aside, even though 20,000 people a day turn 65. So your body changes. I mean, I don't know about your body, but my body certainly changed. And I couldn't wear anything. It wasn't that I didn't feel hip or rock and roll, blue jean baby anymore. There were just no clothes for me. So, number one, I was really true to myself. And I said, okay, no matter what I do, no matter how many doctors I go to, no matter how many sit ups I do a day, this shape of being like a meatball on toothpicks is not going to change. But if I can make clothing that works with it and that camouflages part of it with comfort and style, surely there'll be a market. So I did two things. I shut out all the external blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. That'll never work. No one wants to see fat old chicks in jeans. Old women don't wear jeans. Yeah, they don't wear jeans because they don't have a jean to wear. So I didn't listen to anybody. I went into my true heart of hearts. And because I loved designing so much, I knew I was going by my own instincts. I was going to take a bet on me. And then the interesting thing is, all the CEOs at the television network had been male. We finally got a female who had been part of the rise of Ralph Lauren polo jeans. She had helped
Mm-hmm.
invent them. So I went to her, I pitched my idea, and she said, okay, I think that could work, but she wasn't a fool. She was really smart. And she wasn't going to sacrifice a primetime show to this. She gave me 5 a.m. on a dark, freezing February morning with a large size host who said, I hate jeans. I'll never wear a jean. And when I tried to force her to wear my jeans, broke out in hysterical tears. And still, we had 5,000 jeans to sell. We sold them in 3 minutes at 5 a.m.
Wow.
Eastern Standard Time.
Wow.
So I tapped into a need and a desire that I think a lot of customers didn't even know they had because they never thought it was possible. And that taught me to even more than all the previous times in my life to listen to me, that I had good instincts. So, and then taking it internationally, I just kept thinking all women go through that change and the hormonal change, and their bodies follow along, and this is going to work. And it didn't matter whether you were eating fish and chips in London or pasta in Milan. Again, that was a true instinct. So when I thought about leaving tele-retail after 30 years, I thought to myself, well, you just got two choices. Either stay and slowly kind of wither on the vine or try to rejuvenate yourself. And it seemed important to me. So I
So,
listened to me once
so
again.
that's so amazing, listening to you in a society where there's so much noise.
Oh,
Prior
yeah.
to prior to us talking, you said you live in New York City, and I'm from Brooklyn, and there's not. I mean, noise. Oh, that is the epicenter of of noise. But in a society where there's so many impressions online, billboards, commercials, everything, what what advice would you give a younger woman, a middle-aged woman, and a woman in her golden years to shut out? Because just because you're 70 doesn't mean you don't have goals anymore. And just because you're 17 or 20, it doesn't mean you don't have goals. So how do you what advice do you give to shut that stuff out?
Okay, so I'm going to quote uh, the Rolling Stones and say that one of them said, life's a funny thing. Nobody wants to grow old, but nobody wants to die young.
That is
So,
true.
with that in mind, from Keith Richards, if you are younger, and I did it in a great part because in 1945, when I was born to a mother who was 45, and that was unheard of back then. And I saw her go through a lot of physical changes because of that late birth. I was the only child. And I thought to myself, I do not want to age this way. My mother was uncomfortable, miserable, angry. Um, so I think from a very young age, I was very aware that aging took planning, aging took respect for your body, and it was not going to be easy. So I would tell you if you were younger that if you want to achieve these goals of living to 100, which in blue zones all over the world people do and are active, I would say the first thing you've got to do is truly respect your body, eat correctly, don't eat fast foods, all the things they tell you to do. The great thing about being at Mount Sinai in New York is up on their wall in their Great Hall, which is like 5 stories high, is literally carved into stone the 10 Commandments of living healthy. And, it's the same premise anywhere in the world. Don't eat a lot of red meat, don't drink a lot of alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes. So, blah, blah, blah. Middle age. Don't fight it. And don't, if you find yourself like being aged out in let's say, a corporate situation that has no respect for you, just think to yourself, what could I do for my next act? Let's say you're aged out at 50, 55, and I know plenty of people that have been, maybe become a single practitioner entrepreneur, but do something where you recognize your talents and you are going to get the respect and the satisfaction you deserve. For women my age and at 78, I have to say that I'm in a very fortunate position. I've got a new career. I absolutely love it. I was able to bring a good part of my fan base along with me from tele-retail. But I I am always disturbed when I'm hanging with women my age because I don't I see a lot of living through your children, not living
Mm.
yourself. But also I am not in a position where I'm taking care of an older husband who's beginning to fail health-wise, and I see a lot of women doing just that. I would say you've got to carve out space for yourself. You've got to do something that you, even if it's just for an hour a day. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's canning, I don't know. But do something that you truly love, that touches your heart and gives you satisfaction and possibly makes other people around you happy.
Something you touched on, Diane. One of the things I spend a lot of time with the population who are in their third act, as you say, and I do see a lot of caregivers, and I see care, and it's typically the women caring for their husbands,
Yeah,
and I totally understand. But to your point, there should come a point, or it has to come a point where not only are you caregiving to others, but you have to care give to yourself.
I never see that, and that is, this is so weird, but when I step back from fashion, um, I decided to try and get into a couple of pretty famous women's clubs in New York City. There were women of like experience and age compatibility, and there's never any discussion about taking care of themselves. It's always how bad things are, a husband is failing, and my husband failed and had cancer and passed away when I was 47, and
Oh,
I
wow.
did not remarry. I just immersed myself in my career, which was the right decision for me. So I've been through it, but in a very distant way. And unlike most of the females in the population in my age group, I don't have those concerns right now. I take care of myself. I wake up almost every morning saying, wow, I just life, love life. And I'm so lucky. I mean, but that's just the way the cards fell for me. Yeah. If I could say anything to these ladies, and it's touchy, you kind of cannot, you got to find some grace and some goodness and some joy in the life you're living right now. Easy to say, not so easy to do.
I agree. Let's go back to taking a bet on yourself.
Yeah,
So I've chatted. I've had so many conversations with other champions, and it seems to me that no matter if it's a relationship, if it's finances, if it's a career, business, it seems like there is one theme, underlying tone is take a bet on yourself. Has there been other instances in your life where maybe you should have taken a bet on yourself and you didn't, and you was like, dang, I should have taken a bet on myself?
mm-mm, I don't think so. I think I was always, many times, just felt backed up into a wall, and the choices were this isn't working, quit, or this isn't working, find the door in the wall and get through this. And I always hung in and found the door in the wall. And there were, I think, a few times where the bet would have been to do something society wanted you to do. Have children. That just wasn't for me. Get married again after your husband passed away. That just wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. So it isn't that I didn't pay the price, because I paid the price again and again, because when I sit with a group of my peers, I'm so different. I'm not sitting there talking about grandchildren. I'm talking about, oh, I just started a podcast and we're in the top 10. And they're looking at me like, podcast? What's a podcast? Um, I think that I always knew that I was really equipped to take the road less traveled. And that was going to be my marker in life, but it was also going to be in ways a little bit of a sacrifice, because it can be lonely. It can be like having a machete, chopping your way through the Amazon jungle without a clear path. You're making the path. But, when I look back, and I just had that birthday, and I did a podcast called Conversations with My Younger Self. What advice would I have given myself? I was really shocked. I looked back, and I almost every step of the way, I thought, you had no choice. You had to do it this way, and you did it. So, I'm not saying my life was always comfortable.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I ever had a huge amount of support. But every year, I choose a song that exemplifies the year. And this time it
I
was
love it.
Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way.
Classic. Of course you would pick that. Actually, I love that song.
Yeah, me too.
And you're right. For those who may not be old enough to just YouTube Frank Sinatra, I Did It My Way. I think that is the epitome of how we should live our lives as a champion, and those who are always striving to be a champion, living life my way on my terms.
And one of the great lines in that song, and Elvis did that song too, and it was great, was regrets I've had a few, but too few to really mention. That's me. That's me. I do not live in a zone of regrets. I actually live in a zone of gratitude, and I do believe that when you get to be my age, which is near 80, you're special. You're here for a purpose, and you should find your purpose and fulfill it. We are a generation that's going to live longer than anybody else, but at the same time, unfortunately, this is a country where ageism is rampant, and we're seen as disposable. And so part of my mission is standing up and saying, no, we're not disposable. We are still valuable. We've still got a lot to contribute that can benefit you as younger generations, and then do it.
Do it. I love it. And speaking of doing it, overcoming hurdles. And I know you've mentioned so many things.
Yeah.
But overcoming hurdles seems to be you got to write a book called Overcoming Hurdles.
I'm writing that down.
Overcoming hurdles seems to be a reoccurring theme in your life, from your family initial resistance to your passion, and you decided to choose your destiny over DNA. Then for fashion, to your battle with stage 3 cancer, stage 3 breast cancer. Was it any one challenge that you said, you know what? If this is not the one that takes me out, I know for sure I'm going straight to the top.
I think when you hear that word stage 3 attached to cancer, the one thing I remember saying to myself the night before I started chemotherapy, because my husband passed away from cancer, and it was very, very tragic, challenging, awful, you name it. I just thought, this is not a dress rehearsal anymore.
Right.
And you cannot afford to be scared. You cannot afford to be negative. You cannot afford to be self-pitying. You cannot afford to think that this is not going to work. You have to be your best self every single minute. And somebody, we did and we're going to do a big thing in October on breast cancer. Obviously, we'll do 2 podcasts a week, one on breast cancer with guests and one just regular topics. But so we did one, And I had a couple of very angry listeners who said afterwards, well, you just obviously don't understand. The cancer is so horrible. Oh, trust me. I was the sole caregiver of my husband. I understand. I came out of breast cancer with not a completely intact body. The
Mm,
chemicals and the surgery and everything, it does a number on you, especially if you're older. But I felt if I came through this
mm,
positive and bright and even inspired and not bitter. I felt what got me into the mode of cancer was being in an extremely toxic work environment and that never quit 24/7 from being just awful for a few years. I couldn't allow that to happen during cancer. So I think that what I learned was a lot of self-discipline
mm.
and that it doesn't cost any more to be positive than it does to be negative. So why be negative, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Absolutely.
think that probably coming through it. And then my oncologist said something so interesting to me. She said, my observation is the human body does not have a long memory for pain. So whatever you're going
Mm.
through now, in a year or two, you won't even be able to remember it. And she was right. Absolutely right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's true.
Well,
So I look back on it and I think cancer set me up emotionally, compassionately, empathetically, spiritually to live out the rest of my life to the fullest.
you know what? That's not the first time. Thank you so much for sharing that, Diane. That's not the first time I've heard someone say that. I know personally, my wife, she was
Ah,
diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 29.
well,
And the thing that she said, she was on our podcast some weeks ago, and she said, "You know what, Kashaun? I'm grateful for my MS. I am." Because it changed the way I deal with people. It
yep,
changes the way my perspective on life. And from what I'm hearing, it's the same exact thing you're saying.
same exact thing. And the sadness to me is it makes some people who, who listen to me very angry. They think that I'm not seeing the tragedy or the depth of of a disease that can really inhibit your life, but that isn't true at all. I just chose, like your wife, to deal with it differently, to deal with
Mm-hmm.
it with light
Mm-hmm.
rather than join the darkness.
Mm-hmm. That's because you and my wife, you're one and the same. You both are rebellious. You're not going to let something come along and steal your joy and steal your shine. So you wrote a book called "Too Young to Old." Too Young to Be Old, um,
Yeah.
and discussing conquering life challenges. Are there any stories in that book that you would, that sticks out more than anything else?
The only story I'm going to tell you, because I could go on and on when we're talking about me, of course, I could go
Of
on and on
course.
forever. But I was terrified of chemotherapy. I had seen my husband go through it, although, albeit he went through it almost 30 years ago. Uh, and it was such a new field back then, but it was really, really, really tough. So the night before chemotherapy, and I have no family, I had to just counsel myself. Um, I had a dream, and I don't know if you've ever had a dream where it it's more than a dream. It's almost like an alternate reality. You wake up from it, and
Mm.
you probably remember it the rest of your life. So I'm driving down a country road with a lot of rocks and bumps. It's not even paved, and there's wilderness on both sides. And I'm in my little VW Bug, the favorite car I ever had, my little beige VW Bug, and I hit a stone wall. and I look up, and it's a needle point mountain that just goes straight up, and I think, oh my God. And I back the car up and I gun it, and I go up a little and I slide down, and I gun it again and I go up a little and I slide down. Then I say to myself, well, what? Wait a minute. Even if you got to the top, which is just a needle point, you would just fall down the other side in your car and crash and die. So I got out of the car and turned into a giant, and the mountain became a sharp rock under my feet that I just stepped over. And that
Oh, I
told
like that.
me everything I needed to do to survive, which was see it from an eagle's eye perspective, and don't just try and grow within yourself to a size where you are no longer afraid, where you are ready for the challenge with grace and ease. And that's what I did. And that dream will stay with me forever. It's in the book. And my husband always used to say there's three ways you can look at something. Let's say you're out in the front lawn. You're an ant. Oh my God. Every stalk of grass looks like a giant tree. You're lost in the forest. Or you're a person and you can see little patches here and there. Or you're an eagle and you can see it all and choose where you want to swoop down. And so I chose to be an eagle.
Wow.
Yeah,
With that being said, I have enjoyed our conversation so
me
much.
too.
And not only have you chosen to be an eagle, you have also chosen to be a champion. So with that being said, Diane, what does it truly mean to you to be a champion? If you can sum it up in just a few short sentences and give some advice for someone else who's struggling right now to be that champion.
I think to be a champion, you need to find your true nature and be truthful with yourself. For me, it's interesting. I always thought, oh my God, it can only be fashion. And when I left that world and I signed off and sold my name and sold my company, so that was the deal. I couldn't be in fashion anymore. I thought, that's all I know. I was beginning to think, oh my God, I made a horrible deal. I feel really lost. And then I found my true nature, which was honestly to be a winner. And so
Mm,
getting into a new field and being particularly proud at my age of learning a slew of new things every day and accommodating myself to it and feeling like I'm expansive inside, I found that my calling, my true calling was not particularly fashion, but being a champion and being a winner. And you know what? Stay loose, my friends. Go see the flow and go with the flow. I think we get very rigid as we get older and think this is all there is, but that is not true. There's a whole world out there waiting for you.
absolutely.
Just have the strength to discover it.
I love it. Where can our viewers and listeners find you and locate you?
So I have my own YouTube channel, The Diane Gilman. I have my own website, The Diane Gilman. My podcast is Too Young to Be Old, and that is weekly, except for October when it's actually bi-weekly. And then you'll also find me, The Diane Gilman, on Instagram and TikTok. And I love
I
to also give like little fashion lessons, and I
I
just did a
bet.
thing on red lipstick, and I'm
Okay.
having all kinds of fun.
I love it. Hey, Champion Nation. Diane said so many things today. She dropped so many champion nuggets, such as one of the ones that really stuck out to me more than anything was be authentic. Be yourself. Bet on yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, choose your destiny over DNA. Even if you're laying next to someone right now who doesn't believe in you, choose your destiny over DNA. With that being said, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Champion Nation, please have a champion day. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.